Solomon's Temple. You've heard the name, right? For thousands of years, it's conjured up these images of gold, incredible stone, just unimaginable splendor. But what if I told you that this legendary building wasn't just a place to worship? What if it was actually a message, a kind of cosmic map written in the language of architecture itself? Okay, let's dive in and decode the hidden meaning of Solomon's Temple. Our investigation really kicks off with a puzzle, a real head-scratcher. King David, the giant slayer, the one who united Israel, he wanted to build this temple more than anything, but he was told flat out no. And that prohibition, that big no, is actually our first key to unlocking the whole secret. So to understand why David got rejected, we have to look at the guy who was chosen, his son Solomon. And the contrast between these two, father and son, it isn't just some biographical footnote. Nope, it's the entire foundation of the temple's message. The fundamental difference, as the ancient chronicler tells it, was this. David was a man of war. He had shed much blood. But the temple? It was meant to be a symbol of God's rest, of peace. So the person who built it had to embody that very idea. Solomon, whose name is actually related to the Hebrew word for peace, shalom, well, he was the man for the job. He was a man of peace, so he was the only one qualified to build a house of peace. The character of the builder had to match the character of the building. It's as simple as that.
Okay, so clue number 2. This one isn't something you'd find in the foundation stones or the gold overlay. Now, this clue is hidden in the very structure of the story itself. You see, the person who wrote this history, the chronicler, wasn't just recording events. He was an architect, engineering the story with a hidden blueprint to make a really powerful point.
And that blueprint has a name. It's called a chiastic structure. Think of it like a literary arch, or maybe a sandwich. You present a series of ideas, let's call them A, B, C, and then you mirror them on the way back out, C, B, A. Now this isn't just to be clever. The whole point of doing this is to force your attention right onto the thing in the middle. The most important point is always, always at the peak of the arch.
And the chronicler uses this technique perfectly to frame Solomon's entire reign. The story starts with Solomon's piety, then it moves to his incredible wealth, and then, bam, right at the center, the structural and thematic heart of the whole story is the building of the temple. Then the story mirrors itself, going back to his wealth, and finally back to his piety. The message is just unmistakable. The temple wasn't just another project on the list, it was the central purpose of his entire life and reign.
So the story itself is pointing us to the temple's supreme importance. But here's what's so cool. That literary blueprint was basically mirroring the building's actual blueprint. And this brings us to our third clue, the temple's physical layout. This wasn't just architecture. It was a three-dimensional map of reality, a model of the entire cosmos.
The whole structure was designed to take you on a symbolic journey. As you move deeper and deeper into the temple, you were literally moving through different levels of reality, from the familiar everyday world all the way toward the very presence of God.
So, level 1, the outer court. This was the most open, the most accessible part of the temple. You can think of it as our physical world, noisy, bustling, full of people. It's the common ground, the starting point of our existence.
But then you step through a doorway, and you enter the holy place. This isn't the human world anymore. This room symbolized all of creation. You had things like the table of bread representing provision, and this huge golden lampstand, the menorah, which stood for the sun and moon that govern our time and our seasons. This room was a model of the universe itself, the realm of time and space.
And then, behind one last, very heavy curtain, was the third and final level, the most holy place. This was a small, dark, perfect cube, and it represented a completely different dimension. It was a realm the ancients simply called the holy. It wasn't just a sacred room. It was a symbol for a reality that exists completely beyond the limits of time and space as we know them. This was God's realm. Okay, so let's pull back that curtain. We are now stepping into the absolute heart of the temple and really the heart of this entire mystery. What could possibly be inside this space that represented a dimension beyond our own? The answer is, well, it's both really strange and incredibly profound.
Inside were two massive golden statues of creatures called cherubim. Now you gotta forget any idea of chubby babies with wings, no way. These were these awesome composite creatures designed to be symbols of supreme power. Each part of them represented rule over a different part of creation. The ox for all the domestic animals, the lion for the wild beasts, the eagle for everything in the sky, and a human face for all of mankind. Put them all together, and what you have is a living symbol of total, absolute dominion over all of creation.
But these creatures, they weren't just decorations. Their posture, their placement, it all served a single, very specific purpose. Their huge, outstretched wings came together to form the structure of a throne for the king of the universe.
And right here, this is where we arrive at the central paradox of the entire building. You have this incredible symbol of total cosmic rule, a throne representing power over literally everything that exists. But who's sitting on it? Where's the king?
The throne is empty. There's no statue, no image, just space. And this wasn't some kind of oversight. This emptiness, this was the whole point. That empty space was the most radical and powerful statement that Temple could possibly make. It was a declaration that the God of Israel was a king who ruled over everything. But you could not capture him in an idol or a statue or any kind of physical form. He is present, but he's invisible. His rule is total, but he can't be contained or controlled by his own creation.
Now, there was one object in that room, and it was placed right beneath this empty throne, the Ark of the Covenant. But it wasn't a container for God. It was positioned as the divine footstool. And inside it were the stone tablets of the covenant, the founding agreement, you could say, the terms of the relationship between this invisible king and his people.
And the lid of this footstool, this solid gold mercy seat, that was the designated point of contact. This is where the cosmic, universal rule of the invisible God connected with the messy, complicated reality of human failure. This was the place of atonement, where forgiveness was offered and that relationship between humanity and the holy could be restored.
So when we put all of these clues together, a truly breathtaking picture starts to emerge. Solomon's temple was so much more than just a magnificent building. It was a complete worldview made tangible.
It was a map of reality, showing that our world exists inside a bigger, created universe, and all of that is governed by an invisible dimension, the holy. It was a political statement about the total rule of an unseen king, and it was an intimate diagram of relationship, showing a path for us finite people to connect with an infinite God through forgiveness.
And this powerful symbolism, it didn't just disappear when the temple was eventually destroyed. It was so deeply embedded in the culture that it was picked up and radically reinterpreted. Centuries later, Jesus of Nazareth would stand right there in the temple's courtyard and say, "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up," applying its entire cosmic meaning, that meeting place between God and humanity, to himself.
I mean, just think about it. A building designed to explain the entire universe, to show you where you fit in. It leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? What do our most iconic buildings today, our gleaming skyscrapers, our sprawling tech campuses, our minimalist art museums, what do they say about what we believe is most important? What's at the center of our world?